Okay, this review will be on the 1977 World Series champion New York Yankees. Let's get into the Yankees offense. Set in stone, 1-2 in the lineup. Obviously, Mickey Rivers and Willie Randolph. You see their on base chance numbers right there. You see their numbers. Both of them are really good numbers against left handed pitching. Randolph's year was a little bit down that year compared to some of his other cards. Usually Randolph would be, most years he would be anywhere from about 13 to about 17 with his numbers against both lefties and righties. But you see his numbers reaching base against righties in 1977 was a little bit down that year. Now let's get into the heart of the order. Let's take a look at Thurman Munson, Greg Nettles, and Reggie Jackson. I'm going to show you all of their numbers for hits with multiple base advancement. Now, for those of you who remember the video that I did on the 1978 Yankees, there was a little bit of an issue with the middle of the order because some of the lefty bats, in particular Greg Nettles, and I'll show you Chris Chambliss's numbers later, um, some of their numbers had a pretty drastic dip when they faced left-handed pitching. These numbers are a little bit more consistent, a little bit more in line. You definitely have a little more pop in the 77 Yankee lineup than you did in the compared to the 78 team. So you see Munson's numbers, Nettles' numbers, and Reggie's numbers. Let me go ahead now and show you the numbers for Chris Chambliss and Lou Piniella. You see both of their numbers. Pinella's card is very valuable to have in this lineup because obviously the heart of the order was very weighted to the left-handed side of the plate. So Pinella is a really nice option to have in your outfield. Very good numbers against left-handed pitching, and his numbers against right-handed pitching is good enough to where you could get away with playing him. Next, I'm going to show you the numbers for Cliff Johnson, and you are definitely going to want to get him into your lineup against left-handed pitching. And I'll talk later on about how that's going to impact your defense. But you see Cliff Johnson's numbers against left-handed pitching. Terrific card out of Cliff Johnson in 1977. So you really want to get him into your lineup. Last I'm going to show you is the left fielder Roy White. Now, White's numbers that year were a little bit down, but I'm going to go ahead and show you his numbers versus lefties and righties, his on base chances. It's not a terrible card for a guy who regularly hit seventh or eighth in the lineup, according to the frequently used lineup that is on the sheet that comes out with the full season sets. But it's a lineup that you could kind of play around with a little bit and slide different guys into the lineup if you choose. Right now, let me give you my grades on the 77 Yankees offense. I do really like this offense for the 77 Yanks. Even though Randolph's numbers against right-handed pitching was a little bit down, you have a very solid card out of Mickey Rivers, and Randolph's card is good enough to hit him second against lefties and righties. The middle of the order is definitely has a lot more juice to it as compared to the 1978 team. In particular, what I like about it is you got lefties in the lineup like Nettles, Jackson, and Chambliss who are not adversely affected by facing left-handed pitching like they were in 1978. And I do really like the righty-lefty mix and the depth in this lineup, especially when you are able to slide a guy like Cliff Johnson into the lineup and put him at DH. You do have some nice depth in this 77 Yankees lineup. So their offense grades out at a very, very good score of a 4.3 out of 5. Now let's go through the defense real quick. Let's start up the middle as we always do. Second base, shortstop, no complaints right there. You got Randolph and Dent. They were always very solid. The outfield defense, this is where you're going to run into a issue. If you go by the regular lineup, White, Rivers, and Pinella in the outfield, you could see you got three threes in the outfield, which is not good. That's not what you want at all. And even if you face left-handed pitching and you want to insert Cliff Johnson into the lineup, that means he goes into the lineup as DH. That means Reggie has to go to the outfield, and then you have a four in the outfield. So the outfield defense, I had to grade it as below average. It is not a good defense. Maybe it would have been a little bit better even with the two threes in the corner outfields if Mickey Rivers was a two that year, but he's a three. So you really don't have any real sure outs in the outfield when you roll the fielding chart. So that's a rough score. And as we look at the E ratings, let's stay in the outfield. I guess that is the one good news about Mickey Rivers and Roy White. At least their E ratings are pretty much in line. The E rating in right field is not what you want out of Reggie if he's playing out there. But if you have Pinella in right, his E rating comes up in line. So the outfield E rating is not terrible. What really drags down the overall E rating score, however, and this is not good, is at first base. You have Chris Chambliss, who was an E17 that year. That is not a good rating at all. And anyone who's ever played Strat-O-Matic would know that the E rating at first base and third base is really actually a lot more important than the actual number rating when it comes to the field because the splits are so high at first base and third base. So the E rating score did not come out that great. It did come out at a 3.3 out of 5. A lot of that was driven by the fact that you are really solid at second base, shortstop. You're good enough in the outfield so long as you have White, Rivers, and Pinella in the outfield with their E ratings. So, really, the only real glaring hole when it comes to E ratings on the 1977 Yankees is Chris Chambliss at first base and if you are playing Reggie Jackson in the outfield. So those are your real red flags when it comes to the Yankee defense. So overall, the 1977 Yankees defense grades out of 3.5 out of 5. Now let's take a look at the starting rotation. I am going to go with Mike Torres as the ace, as he had the, albeit he did join the team um, about a month into the season that year. I don't remember when they traded for him. I think it was like early May or something like that. But anyways, Mike Torres, you see his numbers, you see his on base chance numbers. The numbers check out pretty good, but I'm not crazy. He has a little bit of a power issue when he faces left handed hitters. Let's go ahead and look at the starting rotation depth. Let me show you the numbers for Guidry, Figueroa, and Gullett. Now, truth be told, if you're sitting down and you're playing with the 1977 Yankees, Guidry is the guy who's going to start game one for you. Okay. So Guidry by far and away has the best card on the 1977 Yankee staff. In fact, this card you could say is almost just as good as his 1978 card. Really a terrific card for Guidry in 1977, as well he should. Ed Figueroa and Don Gullett, both of them have decent on base chance numbers. However, both of them have an issue with some power opportunities on their card when they face left-handed hitting. So I'm not crazy about that. So the 1977 Yankee starting rotation grades out just slightly above average at a 3.25 out of 5, as I couldn't go any higher than a 3 for Mike Torres because I am not crazy about the power on his card against left-handed hitting, and especially if he's pitching a game and you're playing the ballpark effect home runs in 1977 in Yankee Stadium, that could really be an issue. So that's the score for the 1977 Yankee starting rotation. Now let's look at the bullpen. Let's look at the ace, the Cy Young Award winner from that year, Sparky Lyle. You see very good numbers out of Sparky for 1977. The one thing that was a little bit surprising to me on Sparky's card was I kind of assumed that he would be a 3 inning reliever. He did throw, I don't have it in front of me right now, but I think he threw about 140 innings out of the bullpen that year. But he is listed as a 2 inning reliever. Now let's look at the bullpen depth. This is where we're going to run into a little bit of an issue because you really don't have really any viable options out of your bullpen to get the ball to Sparky. Dick Tidrow, his numbers on the surface look good, but he has way, way too much power on his card when he faces left-handed hitters. Anyone who remembers my 1978 team analysis on the 78 New York Yankees, Tidrow had a really nice card from 1978, and he was really a nice weapon out of the bullpen for that team. And his on base chances in 1977 check out pretty good, but I'm just not crazy about the power opportunities versus left handed hitters. Ken Clay is an interesting option that you could use out of the bullpen. You see his numbers versus right-handed hitters. So he has a very effective card getting right-handed hitters out, but really that is really your only viable other option out of the bullpen. So there's really not much to this Yankees bullpen depth. I just graded them out as average. I gave them a 2.5. I did give Sparky a perfect 5 out of 5 rating. So the 1977 Yankees bullpen grades out at a 3.75 out of 5. And that's basically all Sparky Lyle right there because, again, like I said, you just don't have a lot of options in this 77 Yankees bullpen. So if we're to peel everything back and look at the 1977 Yankees as a whole, you're going to see that they grade out as a 3.7 out of 5, which basically puts them as a good team. It's a well above average team. It seems I've landed on these kind of scores a number of times in the past. So let me share with you right now some teams that, in terms of their final rating, grade out very similarly to the 1977 Yankees. You see that list right there: 85 Royals, 81 Yankees, 94 Expos, 80 Royals, and 97 Marlins. And when I look back and I looked at my sheets for all those teams, you'll see that they pretty much all have the same thing in common, where all of these teams have that one particular weakness that drags everything else down for the team. Like, for example, off the top of my head, I remember the big issue with the 1981 Yankees was their offense. Even though their starting rotation was great and their bullpen was excellent, it was the offense and the defense that dragged them down. The 1985 Royals, you had a little bit of an issue with the offense. The starting rotation was really good, but you had a couple of issues in the defense. So these teams who fall in that area where you're between like a 3.5 and a 3.8, that basically means that these are all still good teams. And yeah, these teams can, on any day, beat any of the teams that I've done videos on who were comfortably above a 4 rating. Like, for example, my last video was on the 1970 Orioles that scored a 4.2. But the big difference between these teams who kind of fall in this block, where they kind of fall between a 3.5 and a 3.8, and the teams who are comfortably above a 4, like the 95 Indians or the 70 Orioles or the 94 Reds, those are the teams that don't have that one glaring weakness that really brings down the entire score. Even though not all aspects of the team may grade as higher as some of the other categories, at least it's not a score that's low enough to drag down the entire score to where they fall below a 4. Where you look at these teams, they all have glaring weaknesses on their team. So if you sit down to play with them, it's really best off to know, well, what are the weaknesses going in and how do I mask that weakness? Like, for example, like I spoke on before, one glaring weakness on the 1977 Yankees is the outfield defense. Well, if you're not crazy about starting excuse me, if you're not crazy about starting three threes in the outfield or even two threes and a four, you could maybe say to yourself, okay, let me sit down Roy White and let me put Paul Blair in the outfield just so I know I got one automatic out in the outfield, something like that. But anyway, that's my grade on the 1977 New York Yankees. They score a 3.7 out of 5. So that's my grade on the 1977 World Champions. My next video will be on one of my favorite Strat-O-Matic teams ever, actually. That will be on the 1980 Houston Astros. Have a good day, everyone.